You look good in NC, bro.
I can do this fully paid.
So we're about to start the NC, but we went ahead and checked the hole on it. It was just low. So grand total, even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bottles, some of them were almost empty because we thought it just needed to be topped off. But there's like 4 quarts there, 4.5 quarts. So we're gonna get this thing fired up and hopefully it starts up, but it's definitely gonna need an oil change because we got a bunch of oils just kind of sitting in there. Heat shield needs to go on. We're not gonna put that on yet. We're just gonna let it start and run and heat cycle just to make sure that we don't have any exhaust leaks on our end. All right, see if it's got power.
I do.
All right, try it. Started right up. Give it a couple reps. So working on the NC Miata, I did some math based off his data logs to realize that he's got like a 2.5 bar map sensor. I don't know what injectors these are, so I've just kind of put some numbers in just to see if it runs, and then I've also enabled flex fuel. So we're gonna test all that and just kind of see what we get really. So I don't know if this car will even start. So I know it's a little fuzzy here because I can't get it to focus, but we do have flex fuel temperature and ethanol content is working. So that currently reads 11, which matches our Zaytronics gauge. So that's good to go there. The car seems to be idling relatively okay though. So these are a set of Injector Dynamics injectors. What's actually really funny was that these are actually for the Turbo NC that we're working on, and it actually still is for the Turbo NC. But what was funny is that just like a lot of other cars, the car came in here just for, you know, simple injector swap and retuning, and it's kind of blown out of control. So I'm not going to go into installing injectors because it's pretty cut and dry on the NC, just like any other car. Remove fuel rail, put new injectors in. The added bonus though is that we won't have to put the connectors in. So this car is already wired for EV14s, so that's going to save us a good bit of time. So we're going to go ahead and drop these injectors in, and then we'll start get a map together, flash this on, and hopefully we can get this car running and driving again.
Many months later.
So the dyno is finally freed up. We got the NC on the dyno. However, the front lip got caught on the actual roller itself and it bent it out. But I think hit it with a little bit of a heat gun and it should come back, because this material is actually, whatever it is, I don't know, it's pretty good really. So we'll try to heat it up after, you know, everything's said and done, because we still got to unload this thing. I was pulling it up on the dyno, and right as I got onto the rear rollers, so the front wheel got on the rear rollers, all I heard was bah! And then, but you know, in order to get it onto the dyno, you have to have a little bit of momentum to get it up. So, you know, there was no way of stopping it, unfortunately. So we got a little bit of a small ding here, but like I said, fortunate enough, I don't think it's anything detrimental. Okay, so dyno is mostly set up. We've got a good bit of the condensation off the tires after doing our load setup. So I think we're good to go here. I just got to check everything over realistically, fluids, whatever. So we'll check that out tomorrow to make sure everything is good, and then we should be able to start tuning this. So just FYI, we still have quite a bit of things that need to be done. We need to actually set up our fuel table still, and what I mean by that, it's actually an injector table. So Mazda, if you guys are somewhat familiar with tuning, there's a thing called injector dead time, right? So injector dead time you get from the manufacturer, and it's just like a, you know, like a voltage versus millisecond time, and you put it into your ECU and you're done. Mazda handles this quite differently, and the way they handle it is there's actually a pressure calculation behind it. These cars are returnless fuel system, And so what happens is on a boosted car, you actually start to lose fuel pressure because of a pressure differential. I'm not going to get into all that science, but that's essentially what happens. The more boost you add, the more fuel pressure you lose is what happens in a nutshell. Now, these cars were tuned for naturally aspirated, so obviously they're not set up for boost. So we've got to dial in the fuel table, and it's somewhat difficult, but somewhat easy. So what we're going to do is, tomorrow we're going to set up our AFR table to like 11 to 1 AFR, like basically the whole table. And what's going to happen is I'm going to log it and see how far off it is based off of the ECU. The ECU, let's just say the ECU is extremely lean in this one point, then I know I need to go into this pressure table and then change it so it actually hits our target.
The next day.
So today's the day. So today we're going to work on finishing out the injector tuning today. Since we've got it on the dyno, we're going to do a lot of steady state tuning today. And the reason why we have to do that is because that flex fuel doesn't have that much resolution. So there's only so much tuning I can do when it comes down to flex fuel. So we need to make sure that we get the injectors dialed in on 93, or as most of you guys know, it's basically 10% ethanol. So we've got to get this dialed in as best as we absolutely can. The better we can dial this in, the better that flex fuel is going to be. And I hate to say it, flex fuel is kind of so-so on this setup anyways, on this platform anyways. But so we really got to dial in the injectors today. One thing that I've noticed, I was checking over the fluids, and it's already a little low on oil. So we gave this car an oil change when the new turbo went on, and I probably may have put 100 miles or so, give or take, on this car. Just street tuning it after we installed the injectors and the turbo itself, and it's half a quart low. So I think there's an oil leak on here. Hopefully that's what it is, and not, you know, I think a worst case scenario is that there's something wrong with the motor, like blow by or whatever. But either way, we're gonna have to get the injectors dialed in today, and then if we've got time, we'll finally do some wide open throttle tuning. All right, so we are together. We've got everything going on right now. We've got the Ecutech going, so we're going to do some steady state, and if everything goes well, we should get locked about 3,000 RPMs in fourth gear. So that's 3,000 RPMs there, and fourth gear. So we made we've got the logs going here, and we're going to kind of review this over now, and then we'll make some changes around that area, and then we'll flash it back on. Alright, so I hate to say it, but I'm not making a headwind on this car at all. There's an issue here where the AFRs aren't tracking. So I'll show you what I mean here. And this was actually a bug on an earlier version of Race ROM, but this is the newest version of Race ROM, and so I don't think this should be a problem anymore. So what's happening is that in this fuel map here, as you can see, we've got a bunch of AFR targets, and I started a fresh map, okay, just to make sure that it wasn't a Race ROM issue, or hopefully it's not a Race ROM issue. So this is a completely fresh file. I basically copied the main settings and then I pasted it over. And so what's happening here is that, as you can see, it's saying 14.7, right? And so your AFR target is 14.7, but I can rev it, so I can rev it up to this area here and these targets don't track. Okay, so I've cleared the minimum and the max, okay? And this is on a very bad tune, mind you, so... Okay. So apparently it's pretty bad. So you see here, it says 13, but over here, it's not tracking that. Even though it should be 14s, it's definitely not tracking, and the final is completely wrong. So the final was reading like 12-1, even though, again, this table should be reflecting what it is. So something goofy is going on here. I'm not really sure why. I've already messaged Ecutech already, but the problem is that they're overseas, so you know, we're not getting anything out of them, and we probably won't hear back from them until tomorrow. So I hope you guys are gonna see this. You probably aren't. It's probably gonna be kind of blurry, so you'll have to take my word for it. So this is just like my AFR map that I use to dial in the injectors. It's nothing really crazy. It's just like a solid AFR number down here, down low, and then up top here is like closed loop. So in closed loop mode, the ECU should be trying to target 14.7, and it should be trying to essentially hit that target, and it'll make changes. In open loop mode, it shouldn't try to make any changes whatsoever. So what we're going to look at here is that we're at 3,000 RPMs and 1.5 load is what I'm going to call it. And so if you look here on the cursor, that's going to set us here at 11.7. Now the problem is that if you look up here, you'll see that the AFR target is still saying 14.7. And what happens is even though the car's running 13-1, it's trying to remove fuel from it. So in this particular instance, we're at 13.1, our target should be 11.7, so it shouldn't be doing anything, and if it is doing something, it should be adding fuel. But as you can see here, it's clearly removing fuel from this, and that's causing all of our problems. Okay, so I do want to mention something here. As a tuner, I'm not able to look at other people's tunes unless they purposely unlock it. So this data log here is actually not from my tune. This is the tune that was on the car, and we were doing logs just to kind of check it over to see what was all going on with the car. So this log is actually from when we first got the car here, before we knew that there was an issue with the turbo, before we knew there was a crack in the exhaust manifold. The only thing that we knew at the time was that it did have a check engine light for the O2 sensor. But if you take a look here, you'll see that on the target final, it actually moves around like it's supposed to. So we were suspect on the actual wideband, the actual lambda reading, because we knew there was a code for the O2 sensor. But what's important here is that the AFR target is changing. So I'm gonna go find an area. So here, this is 11.7, so it should be out of closed loop. And if you look here, you can see that the short term is 0. That means that the ECU is no longer correcting for it. So there's something that's going on here. I don't know what version of race ROM this car was on. What I do know is that this car is not set, at the time, was not set up for flex fuel. The ethanol content sensor was there, but this ROM file did not have CAN enabled for flex fuel. So that means that this has got to be an older version of race ROM. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to build another map using a different version of race ROM that I currently am using. And then once I do that, I'll flash it back on and then test it again. All right, so I built a different ROM altogether, different part number and everything, with the latest version of race ROM here. One of my other buddies, who's also a tuner, told me about it. So I've just basically used the tree to figure out, they give you a family tree, if you will, of ROMs that are compatible. So he had an issue with this same ROM file. He gave me a compatible ROM. So if you look here, like they give you, like Ecutech gives you a list of like which ROMs are compatible. So I used a different ROM, copied and pasted everything over with the new race ROM, and we're gonna flash it back on and we're gonna test it. So if everything goes well, fingers crossed, it should just work. Okay, so we are actually, in fact, getting some stuff here. Fuel, the target is changing like it's supposed to. And as you can see, when we're actually in open loop, if you look at the short term here, it's going to 0. So that means that the ECU is no longer compensating. So it is finally freaking working. It looks like the wideband bottoms out though pretty good. So we're definitely gonna have to lean it out. But thank God it's finally working.